Good evening, everyone. As I have promised during the first day of classes, if ever I will not be available for our face-to-face classes, then I'm going to upload a video lecture so that we will not lose time in order for us to finish the coverage for commercial law review. So, since I have already given you a copy of the syllabus, or at least for the first part, which is business organizations, particularly the revised corporation code. So whatever I'm going to discuss under this video or in this particular lecture, you will have to just watch this, and then when we meet face to face, then we're going to pick up where we left off. Okay, so first let's talk about the general principles. Of course, the nature and attributes, and some other principles regarding corporations, which of course I am sure you already know, but as part of our review, we're going to go back and refresh. Let me refresh your memory regarding some of the more important principles regarding corporations. First, what is the definition? As I have emphasized when you were under me in corporation law, this is one of the provisions of the law which you have to at least memorize. While I am not much of a memorizer myself, still there are certain provisions, certain concepts, certain definitions which you have to remember by heart, and this is one of those. So a corporation is an artificial being created by operation of law, having the right of succession and the powers, attributes, and properties expressly authorized by law or incident to its existence. Okay, remember that, because if you know this by heart, then at least if the question in the bar exam would center on what is corporation, what would be its powers, etc., then you would have something to write, because it's there already. It's there in the definition. Okay, now I have also noted before that there is a so-called tri-level existence in the corporate setting. So we have a corporation, and then there is this tri-level existence. It has three perspectives from what you have to know about the corporation. For instance, so the corporation is, of course, a juridical entity. Okay, it's an artificial being. It's created by operation of law. So it's not like us natural persons, but it is a being nonetheless. Okay, so it is a juridical entity, an artificial being created by law, and therefore it exists by a grant of state. Okay, because of a grant by the state. Okay, and this results in it having this kind of relationship with the state, which is that the state grants its existence, and therefore it owes its existence to the state. Without the state's grant, then there could be no corporation, there could be no artificial being known as a corporation. Okay, so that's one type of relationship, that between the corporation and the state. And then between the corporation and other parties, we have the contractual relations, and there are 4 levels here, or 4 types. So we have the relationship between the corporations and its agents or representatives, meaning its corporate officers and directors, and these officers and directors, of course, are the ones who act in behalf of this corporation. And then we have the shareholders or stockholders of the corporations, and for non-stock corporations, that would be the members. So that's another type of relationship. And then we have the relationship between and among the members or shareholders of the corporation. Okay, because they're there, they are all in it. And then finally, we have the corporation and other third parties. Okay, and but this time this is no longer covered by the corporation law, but by some other law. So when the corporation enters into transactions with vendors, suppliers, its clients, then that is another level of relationship. Okay, and of course we need to consider that most corporations, especially stock corporations, it is considered as a business economic unit, and therefore it is considered as an ongoing concern. Okay, so that is so that we can visualize what this artificial being is. Now, what are the attributes of the corporation? As I've said in the definition which we have stated a while ago, nandun na rin yun, okay? Some of it were already noted in the definition. But we have to remember that there are certain theories in the formation of a corporation, and I have discussed this in corporation law, but let me just reiterate, no? It's nice to know where we're coming from, meaning what do we believe in this jurisdiction, how corporations are created. First, if we have the theory of concession, of course, it says that a corporation cannot exist without a state-granted franchise. Okay, so the corporation owes its existence to the state. And when you look at the definition of what a corporation is, then clearly we sort of abide by this particular theory. But it's not 100%, okay? It's not absolute, because we also believe that the corporation, okay, is an association, no, of people, no, who would like to go into a particular business, and that is the theory of enterprise entity, okay, or the so-called Genossenschaft theory. It says that the corporation is not merely an artificial being which was granted, no, existence by the state, but it is also an association of persons doing business, no, because they want to do business, because they want to go into a particular venture. Okay, so it's really an economic unit, because you create a corporation because you want to earn money or go into a venture, or even go into charity work. So whatever endeavor you want to do, that is your impetus for creating the corporation. So these two theories, the theory of concession as well as the theory of enterprise entity, are both used in our jurisdiction. Even though the definition of corporation is inclined more towards the theory of concession, still there are certain jurisprudence as well as concepts or principles that we follow in our jurisdiction which lean towards the theory of enterprise entity, and that's why we have the corporation by estoppel doctrine. We also have this de facto corporation, okay? Because without this theory of enterprise entity, then these two theories, these two principles which we follow as an exception to the general rule would not be in place. Okay, now, so what else are the attributes of a corporation aside from it being an artificial being? Remember that we have two types of beings, or entities which are recognized in our jurisdiction. We have the natural persons, and then we also have the so-called juridical entities or juridical persons. In fact, under the civil code, it says that we recognize the state and its political subdivisions as an entity, and then other corporations, for public interest, and then we also have the corporations, partnerships, and associations for private interest or purpose, which the law actually grants a separate juridical personality. Okay. Now, with that, please remember the case of the JRS case. I think, remember that case so that you will not forget the so-called franchise. Okay, so we have two levels of the franchise. We have the primary franchise, which is your existence, meaning the existence of the corporation, and the secondary franchise, which may be a separate grant if you want to go into the type of business which is heavily regulated by the state, such as telecommunications, such as certain types of businesses, banking institutions. These all require separate franchises or grants, before they can go into that particular business endeavor. But what is very important is the primary franchise, your existence. And in our jurisdiction, private corporations are governed by one law, which is the general law, the corporation code. Now, what else? Okay. So what are the attributes? We already talked about it being an artificial being. So it is a creation by the state, or at least the state allows your existence. It merely allows your existence by having this particular general law under which such corporations, no, or such beings may be created or established. So again, based on the definition, it is created by operation of law. Okay, so you need to comply with certain requirements. Okay? When we say that you come into being only by operation of law, then you need to follow certain requirements. That is the rigor. Kailangan ganun talaga, di ba? Hindi naman yan basta poof, magic, created na. So you file your application, then you make sure that you are eligible, that you meet all of the requirements, that you submit all of the documentation or whatever. So okay, you need to have that. You need to possess all those requirements before you can be a corporation. Okay, and then it has the right of succession. That is very important. It's one of the most important attributes of a corporation. So it has a separate juridical personality, but at the same time, no, unlike, let's say, a partnership, if someone dies, if its incorporators die, no, or one of those incorporators die, it will not automatically result in the death, no, or cessation of the operations of the corporation. So there is succession. Okay, so even if there is substantial change in the individual persons who make up the corporation, then the separate personality of the corporation remains intact. Okay. So hindi siya kagad mamamatay, hindi siya mawawala, unlike, let's say, of course, in a sole proprietorship, or let's say in partnership, wherein the change in the composition of the partnership might affect the very existence of that particular entity. Okay, and then finally, it has the powers, attributes, and properties which are expressly authorized by law or incident to its existence. So what are the powers of the corporation? We'll go into that now much later during the review, but of course we need to consider now its express powers, its incidental powers, and then all of this you can already find in the definition. Okay, now why do we want to form corporations? Of course, there are certain advantages and disadvantages to it as a form of a business organization, no? But the advantages, of course, as the attributes tell us, would be its strong separate juridical personality, which is tied to its having the right of succession, and of course the limited liability for those who simply like to invest in the corporation. You don't want to manage, no, directly the corporation, no, or the business, so you'd rather join a corporation, be a stockholder of a corporation, rather than go into business by yourself or join a partnership. And then of course there's free transferability of ownership. When you buy shares and you're no longer interested in being part of the corporation, you can sell your shares generally. And then what are the disadvantages? Of course, since there's no direct participation of all of the stockholders in the day-to-day operations of the corporation, what happens is there can be some management abuse, no, or corporate abuse that may be committed by those in charge of managing the corporations, particularly the board of directors and the corporate officers. And then of course it will be more costly, no, to put up a corporation rather than having, let's say, just a sole proprietorship. Okay, so comparing that with the other types of corporations, of business organizations rather, such as a sole proprietorship or a partnership, then you can see that the strength of the corporation is really its more centralized management, its strong separate juridical personality, and the structure which it affords the stockholders. So it really depends on the type of business or endeavor that you would like to form or to go into. Depending on that, that's when you choose what type of business organization you actually use, no, as your business organization. Okay, now another thing that we must remember, no, based on the syllabus, no, take note of the cases of Stonehill versus Diokno and Buck and Company versus Ruiz. So usually when I talk about these cases, it is in relation to the Constitution, no, or the Bill of Rights. However, no, at the bottom line, no, these two cases actually give us the strength of a corporation, no, due to its separate juridical personality and how we treat it, no, with respect to the entitlement under the Bill of Rights or under our Constitution. Remember, natural persons, of course, we have our rights protected under the Bill of Rights, under the Constitution. But what about these corporations which actually owe their existence to the state? Do they also benefit from the rights granted by the Constitution? Of course, they do. And this is tied to their separate juridical personality. So, under the case of Stonehill, no, versus Diokno, remember that case wherein there were certain violations, no, that the corporation was alleged to have committed, and then warrants, no, search warrants were issued against the corporation and even against the stockholders of the corporation, the officers of the corporation. So these warrants were served, blah blah blah, in order for the court, no, to have possession of the books of accounts as well as related documents. Now, the idea was the individual, no, petitioners, the individual stockholders now questioned, no, or objected to the search warrants, no. They said that the search warrants were invalid, okay, and therefore these documents could not be used. So following the fruit of the poisonous tree doctrine, okay. But the court said that as to those, no, as to those warrants which were served against, no, the individual stockholders, then yes, the court could take cognizance of that, and then it can rule whether or not it was really invalidly issued, no, it was not valid. But as to the issue of the warrants, no, served against the corporation, it said that the petitioners, no, the individual petitioners, individual stockholders did not have the personality to institute the case or to object to that warrants, but because the individual petitioners, no, had a separate and distinct personality from that of the corporation, and therefore the result was that it should have been the corporation itself which questioned, no, the validity of the search warrants, okay. And that's why, no, in the second case of Buck and Company versus Ruiz, almost the same or similar, no, set of circumstances. There were also search warrants issued, no, against the corporation, but this time, no, the corporation objected to the issued warrants, and here the objection prospered. Okay, so magkaibang nangyari between the Stonehill case and the Buck and Company case, because this time, tama, it was the corporation which objected to it, and therefore it has the personality. Okay, so in the first case, the Stonehill case, the private individuals, the individual stockholders, no, were the ones who contested or objected to the search warrants, and therefore the court ruled that no, you cannot do that. You can only do that with respect to the warrants issued against you, but not as against the corporation. It should be the corporation to it's only the corporation which has the personality to object to it. Okay, so we go now to the concept of real party in interest, no, in procedural law, remedial law. Okay, and this time natuto na sila. Sabi nila dito sa Buck and Company, yes, it is now correct because it was the corporation which stood up for its right, no, and therefore it was able to avail of the equal protection clause under the Constitution. Okay. So that is what happened in this particular case. Okay. Now, before we go into the doctrines, no, of piercing the corporate veil and trust fund doctrine, which we would have to discuss better now face to face. Let me just go into the kinds of corporation so that we can have a better discussion on the doctrine of piercing the veil as well as the trust fund doctrine. Okay, now what are the classifications of corporations? Traditionally, we have the so-called public corporations, and then on one hand we have the private corporations. But let me just emphasize, it is not based on what you actually do, because there are certain instances when the corporation actually performs private functions, but it is still considered as a public corporation. And on the other hand, there are seemingly private corporations, but which perform public functions, and therefore we no longer adhere to that traditional thinking. Okay, but under our laws, that is the main classification: public versus private corporations. So usually when we say private, they are formed for some private purpose, and then for those which have some public purpose, again, they may be considered as public corporation, but that is as to purpose. Now, what we use when we talk about public corporations is a definition which was given in one of the cases decided by the Supreme Court. It says that a public corporation is created for the government of a portion of the state. Okay. So, it can be what? It can be a local government unit that is considered as a public corporation. It can be, let's say, the executive government, a government corporation, but which is performing, let's say, public functions such as the PAGCOR, that is considered as a public corporation. So, as I've said, you focus into whether that was created for a government purpose, or for it to exercise governmental or state sovereignty. If not, then it must be a private corporation. Another way by which we can determine that is under which law was it created. So usually, if it is created by a separate charter, meaning an act of Congress, then that is a public corporation. But if it was created under the general law, meaning the corporation code, then that is a private corporation. Okay, so a corporation may also be either domestic or foreign. Domestic corporations are those which are of course incorporated here, and then we also have foreign corporations, which is governed under a different provision of the corporation code. So what is a foreign corporation? It is one which was formed, organized, or existing under laws other than those of the Philippines, and whose laws allow Filipino citizens and corporations to do business in its own country or state. So it does not suffice that a corporation was just created or established in the US or maybe in Lithuania or somewhere else. What is important for it to be considered as a foreign corporation in our jurisdiction is the concept of reciprocity. If there's no reciprocity, then it is not considered as a foreign corporation. What is reciprocity? That the laws of that country where this foreign corporation was established also allow Filipino citizens and corporations to do business in their particular country or state. Okay, that is the reciprocity, and that is important. So not all, so what is the result? Not all corporations which was formed outside of the Philippines may be considered as a foreign corporation under our law. Okay. Now, as to nationality, okay, take note of the provision of the corporation code on that. We have what? It can be considered as a Philippine corporation or maybe a foreign corporation. So we consider where it was incorporated. We also consider the principal place of business, or the amount of the investment poured into that particular corporation in order to determine the nationality. Now, why is it important for us to know what is the nationality of a corporation? Because there are certain business endeavors, there are certain things which is limited only to Filipino corporations. Okay, so one example would be the exploitation of natural resources. The law says that only Filipino corporations, or at least let's say a majority, would be able to exploit our natural resources. Public utilities also, okay, such as telecommunications or electricity, diba? All this. And then oil, of course, mining, etc. All of these are to a certain degree controlled. No? May mga limitations under the Constitution on who may be allowed to exploit these resources or to go into this type of businesses or endeavors. Mass media is also controlled by the government, and that's why we need to consider and know what is the nationality of the particular corporation. And this is also important when we talk about the so-called wartime test natin. Kasi when there's a problem between states, etc., the corporations may be caught in the middle, such that, okay, especially during the First World War and the Second World War, so the properties of certain corporations, if they are in conflict with the host country, would have to be confiscated. Okay, they will not be able to continue their operations. Worse, of course, for the natural persons, they might be imprisoned, or they might have to leave the country. So these are just natural effects of the war. And even if these are simply juridical persons and not natural persons, they may be affected by such. Okay, so in order to do that, we have the so-called grandfather rule. What is this grandfather rule? It says that a corporation may be considered a citizen for a particular purpose, and for instance, again, in the exploitation of resources, or during, let's say, wartime, whatever the case may be, if you need to know the nationality, if determining the nationality of a corporation is important, then you can use the grandfather rule. Okay, so if incorporated in the Philippines and at least 60% owned by Filipinos, then it is considered as a Filipino corporation. Now, this brings me, as an aside, this brings me to supposedly our predilection to say that, let's say there's a celebrity, and then that he is also or he is also Filipino, part Filipino, etc. We have that tendency, diba? Let's say a singer or an actor or an actress, or someone who is famous, has some Filipino heritage. Kine-claim natin, diba? Ay, si ganon, si Nicole Scherzinger, Filipino yan. Si Bruno Mars, part Filipino. Vanessa Hudgens is part Filipino. But, well, we do that maybe because we would like to be proud of them, just to point out that they also have some Filipino blood in them. Pero ganun din yon sa grandfather rule. Okay, so kikaimin na natin kasi nga 60% owned siya, so therefore it's a Filipino corporation. So this rule is actually a method to determine the percentage of Filipino equity. So kung parang sa mga artista hinahanap natin, parang kay Catriona Gray, ilan ba percent ba? Half Filipino ba siya? 50% ba siya? Or 30% lang? Or 15% lang? Or, kanununuan na lang niya Filipino? Ganon din dito. So, it is a method to determine the percentage of Filipino equity in a corporation engaged in a nationalized or partly nationalized area of activity, such as mass media, public utilities, mining, etc. So, yun yung mga nationalized industries, or activities. And, we compute it in cases where there are corporate shareholders which are part of the ownership structure. So, corporations are allowed to own shares in a corporation. And that's why, in order to prevent yung underhanded tactic of kunwari papalitawin mo na you're a domestic or a Filipino corporation by buying shares in another corporation, so you look into its parentage. Okay, parang yung ginagawa natin sa mga artista, sino ba yung lolo niyan o lola niyan or something. You look or you delve deeper into the ownership, no, of the shares, so that we can determine whether it will meet the ownership requirement, no, for purposes of those nationalized activities. Okay, so if 60% nga, no, whether or not corporate ownership of the shares or individual shareholders, then it may be considered as a Filipino corporation. Okay, so 2 levels of corporate relations for publicly held corporations, and for those closed corporations, then it can be considered as 3 levels. Hanapin mo sa 3 levels, no? So you look into it. So kung tayo ay masipag maghanap kung Pilipino o hindi ang isang celebrity, then dito, i-apply din natin yon. Hanapin mo ano ang kanyang parentage, ano ownership ng shares. And if it meets the 60% requirement, then following the grandfather rule, you may be able to determine that. Okay. Now, of course, the nationality, test natin, you look into the ownership, again, of the shares. So, what is the nationality of the holder? Okay. And again, if it will not meet the qualification, then hindi siya considered as domestic or Filipino corporation. And it might not be able to participate in nationalized activities, or it may be affected by the war. It reminds me of the case of Filipinas Company versus, I think, Chistern. So, what happened here was, during the war, the properties of this corporation was affected, and then yung insurance, no? Siyempre hahabulin niyo yung insurance because the property as well as the goods were insured, no? So, ang naging problema is that the corporation, no, is German. Okay? So, the nationality of the shareholders of, I think, Christian company were German. And of course, Germany is kalaban natin. Kalaban, di ba? Kasi nga that was during the Second World War. So, the Filipino insurance company, no, it did not want to pay. Okay, so but it actually paid the claim, but it was in protest. Okay, and the ruling of the court was that the German company, no, was considered as an enemy corporation because when the United States, no, which is our ally, no, declared war against Germany, then the company, which was owned by the majority of the shares was held by German nationals, was considered as an enemy corporation, and therefore the insurance policy issued by the Filipino company, no, against or for Christian, in favor of Christian, was no longer honored kasi nga kaaway na natin. Okay. So, was that fair? Not necessarily, but that is where we apply, no, this nationality test, etc. That is the practical application of why we need to know, no, the composition, no, the nationality or the composition of the stockholders or the majority of the stocks, etc., of a particular corporation. Okay. Now, what are the other types of corporations? No, of course, we have the municipal as well as the religious corporations. What are municipal? Those which are not religious, so they perform functions which are not religious in nature. So religious corporations, they are two types. So we have the corporation sole or corporation sole, or we also have the religious society. So of course, the best example for a corporation sole would be the Iglesia ni Cristo, and for the religious societies, we have the Jesuits, we have the Dominicans, we have the SBD, so the different religious societies. Now, what about the other types of religious sects or denominations? Then they will also go into that. It will now depend on whether they incorporated themselves as corporation sole or as religious societies. Okay, so there is a different provision, no? There are different provisions in the corporation code regarding religious corporations. And why do we have to make, you know, some sort of distinction between other corporations and religious corporations? Usually because of tax purposes. Okay, so we learned that in taxation that the properties, no, which are solely used, no, for religious purposes may not be taxed. Okay? So that is one thing that we consider why we need to know how this particular religious group was incorporated. And religious corporations have some benefits, no, not just benefits, but they also have some prohibitions which apply to them solely. So that's why we need to determine, and they are treated differently, of course, under the corporation code. So well, a corporation sole composed only of one person who is in charge of the administration of the properties of a particular sect or religious denomination. But the religious societies or associations composed of more than one member. And why do we allow that? Before you talk to me about separation of church and state, etc. Of course, we allow that. No? We allow that. And under, I think, one of the jurisprudence, it says that they need to, these religious denominations, these religious sects should be able to take care of their temporal matters. No? And what are the temporal matters? Of course, they need to build churches, they need to own some properties. They do that. No? Hindi naman puro prayers lang yan and vigils and whatnot. So, they need to do that, and to be able to do that, no, they can form either as a corporation sole or a religious society. Okay? And then they have a different set of rules, no, to follow under the corporation code, and of course under our tax code and some other laws which specifically, no, regulate such religious organizations. Okay. Now we also have educational corporations. No, usually educational corporations are non-stock, but there are also stock corporations, the purpose of which is for the establishment of schools, etc. Okay. Now, why do we have some provisions again which are only for educational institutions? Again, usually tax treatment and what they can and they are not supposed to do. So these are special types of corporations. Then, what else? Of course, we have the one-person corporation, diba? And we're going to discuss that in a different, day, no, because it's one of the more innovative features of the revised corporation code. So it's like a hybrid between a sole proprietorship and that of a corporation, and not just for religious purpose like a corporation sole, but a one-person corporation has its roots in Western. No? In other jurisdictions, we have the limited liability corporations or LLCs, and that is actually the pattern for the one-person corporation. But as you read the provisions on that, sometimes you will find it weird. I do find it weird. And 6 years now into the promulgation or enactment of the revised corporation code, it was only recently that there are registrants for the one-person corporation scheme. So I think, like us, confused din yung iba, na ba to? Would it be good for us or whatever? So I hope that when we test the waters, we will further understand the concept of the one-person corporation. But moving on, okay, what else? Of course, the most common, no, types of corporation is that of the stock corporation and the non-stock corporation. So as to the existence of shares, we have these two types. So we have the stock and then we have the non-stock. So corporations, no, which have a capital stock divided into shares, no, and are authorized to distribute the holders, no, of such shares or dividends or allotments, no, based on their surplus profits, are considered as stock corporations. Now, if you don't have that, you do not divide your it into shares, no, your capital into shares, etc., then you are a non-stock corporation. Okay, ganun lang yung difference nila. But they have different rules, no? Some of the rules under the corporation code can be used for both stock and non-stock, but some would only be applicable to stock corporation and the other to non-stock corporations. Okay, so usually, but I'm not saying all, usually non-stock corporations are formed or organized for charitable, religious, educational, professional, cultural, and alike, no? Ganun. Usually not for business or profit when you form non-stock corporations. But stock corporations, then definitely for profit. Okay. Now, what about these terms that we hear when we listen to the news, or maybe they read our newspapers? Parent company, or nakita mo dun sa ad, sabi a subsidiary of Metrobank or of BPI. What are these? So these are the terms we use, no, to describe a corporation based on the relationship of management and control. So for instance, a parent or a holding company is one which is related to another corporation, that it has the power, no, either directly or indirectly, to elect the majority of the directors of such corporation. So it's more of the can I have control of the board of that corporation. So pag malaki siya and it can do that, then it may be considered as a parent company or holding company. Now we have the affiliates or an affiliate company. What are these? So it is a company or a corporation which is related to another by being owned in common by another company, or if let's say it has a long-term lease of the properties or some other control device. So an affiliate of Ayala Corporation, etc. So may ganun din silang relationship. So they may be two or more corporations which consider themselves as affiliate of another company by virtue of either common management or again use, no, or ownership of certain common properties. So that's what affiliates are. Now, what about subsidiaries? Subsidiaries, no, or subsidiary corporation is one which another corporation, no, owns at least a majority, and therefore obviously it has control over that corporation. So, kunwari, being a subsidiary of Banco de Oro, diba? Or a subsidiary of SM, etc. So, with that, what about the so-called closed corporations? Again, this is another special type of corporation. So, a closed corporation, no, is one whose articles of incorporation, of course we know what the AI is. It provides that all the corporations issued stock of all classes, no, exclusive of the treasury shares, etc., shall be held of record by not more than a specified number of persons, usually not exceeding 20. Okay, and that the stocks, no, of this particular corporation shall be subject to one or more specified restrictions on transfer. Okay, and most importantly, it is not publicly listed. Sabi, it shall not list in any stock exchange or make any public offering of any of its stock. Okay, and that's why usually, no, we have closed corporations which are owned by one family. Okay, so parang nagiging synonymous siya with a family corporation. Let's say this family, they will form a closed corporation, and then sila din, diba? They form the board of directors, and then of course they will not allow, you know, anyone to just buy shares, and even their own members, their own family members, they're not allowed to dispose of their shares, no, generally. So mayroong restriction sa mga transfer or transferability of shares. Now, can you go into any kind of business if you are a closed corporation? Generally, yes, except for what? Except mining or oil companies, stock exchanges, of course, kasi nga hindi rin naman sila pwedeng mag-list sa stock exchange. Banks cannot be a closed corporation. Insurance companies, public utilities, educational institutions, and corporations, no, declared to be vested with public interest. Okay? So, only the usual business, no, may be entered into by a closed corporation. So, most of the heavily regulated types of businesses, no, cannot be subject of a closed corporation. You cannot just have a closed corporation if you want to go into these certain types of businesses. Okay? So, that's why we say that based on the restrictions, based on the definition of what a closed corporation is, it appears that it's like a partnership. No? And if you remember my question, no, during the midterm examinations in corporation law, sabi ko is a closed corporation is like what? A de facto partnership, a de facto corporation, a de facto partnership in a corporate shell, something like that. Okay, and some of you were able to discuss it and know what I'm pointing at. Some were a bit confused na ano ba ibig sabihin ni ma'am dito, but actually that's it, no? Because it is essentially an incorporated partnership in which the stockholders consider each other as partners, but of course the law treats it as a corporation, okay? Because it has to follow the rules in the corporation, including how it incorporates. Okay, why? Because again, the stockholders should not exceed 20 persons. There are restrictions on the transfer of shares. Again, you cannot just, you know, sell your shares. It is not listed in the stock exchange, and you cannot publicly offer, no, you cannot have a public offering, and the 2/3 of the stock should not be owned by another corporation. So because of these attributes, no, or requirements, then it's like really a partnership. Okay, so what else do we need to remember? So we have so far talked about the nature and attributes of corporation, including its definition. We talked about nationality of corporations in terms of control test and the grandfather rule. We also talked about the doctrine of separate juridical personality, which is essential because it's one of the characteristics or attributes of a corporation. And then we already talked about the kinds of corporation: stock, non-stock, closed, educational, religious, except for one person corporation, which I am going to talk about in a different discussion. What else? So basically, let's talk about the formation of corporations. Ayan, move na tayo doon. Incorporation and organization. But let us just discuss some of the okay. So promoters, of course, we have these people, no? These are people who assist, no, in the mobilization, in the formation of a corporation. That is considered as a promoter. Okay, and then aside from that, we have the so-called subscription contract, no? And under the law, it is the acquisition, no? It refers to the acquisition of an issued stock in an existing corporation, or a corporation is still to be formed. And this is different from when you purchase existing shares of stock. Okay, we have to remember that it might not be something which will appear in the bar exam, but you have to know the difference when let's say in the exam there is this discussion on the buying and selling of shares, etc. So you should know whether he was subscribing to shares or if he was just purchasing shares. Now, in subscription, we're talking about an issued shares of stock of a stock corporation. But in purchase agreements, we're talking about issued shares of stock. Okay? So, subscription contracts are governed by the corporation code. Okay, why? Because it involves the relation between the corporation and stockholders. Okay. Now, on the other hand, purchase, para lang siyang sale. So, it's covered by the civil law or civil law, and because it is covered, no, by the agreement, no, between the corporation and the third party, which is purchasing or buying the particular shares. Now, again, why should we distinguish between the two? Because in subscription contracts, if the corporation becomes insolvent, kung meron ka pang hindi bayad, no, if there are still unpaid subscription, then it becomes immediately due and demandable. But if it's just a purchase agreement, then if the purchaser, or if the corporation becomes insolvent, then the